First, is it your duty to let your children decide how you vote at the election? I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0207 862 2222 is the number to get in touch. So I've got this situation, and I'm just conjuring with you here, where I'm a father of two. One is still a teenager; she can't vote. And I've got on the shelf at home this thing that says postal vote, this envelope. I know what's inside it because I had it for the London mayoral election just a month or two ago. And when you open it, it says, put your X here and send it off in there's another envelope inside. So I'm thinking, like, maybe I should just say to the 17-year-old, here you go. You take it. It's your future, not mine.
Is that legal?
No.
That was a secondary thought I had, is it might be illegal.
You also have to sign it.
I have to sign it.
So it's really you then. I suppose you could have dialogue and say, can you help me?
Let's say we do this instead.
Yeah.
I say to her, I can't give you this because it's illegal.
Yep.
But I'm going to put a pen in my hand, look away, and I'm going to let you put your cross where you want mine to be. And the principle here is this, Chris, that it's their world, not ours.
Well, as the father of a 14-year-old and a 70-year-old boy, I do take some sympathy for this. I wouldn't let my kids decide how I vote, but I would talk to them about it.
Yeah.
And both my kids, on their own volition, I have to say this, went and demonstrated over Gaza.
Okay.
Both are boycotting McDonald's because of that. So they're pretty sussed. And I would listen to them. I'd actually talk with them about it. Now, I wouldn't let them decide my vote.
Why not? Because why not? They're going to be paying more tax than you in the years to come because you've got fewer years left.
Let me ask both of you a question. Obviously, you would have a conversation with your children prior to them helping to decide. But would you be completely non-biased about how you present the political parties, or would you,
listen, they're not going to listen to anything I say about,
yes.
Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Well, you can't
if you're
be
going to demonise would you demonise all
I am
the same
very
crazy
careful.
bullshit?
The point I made about them going demonstrating in Gaza, I put no pressure on them. I didn't go in because I think that's counterproductive.
Yeah.
I don't try and impose my agenda on them. Of course, if they said something offensive, I would say, don't do that. That has happened.
Would you be able to say positives about
Reform,
Conservative, Labour, Green?
Why do you think you've got any right to
for.
tell them anything about their politics when you and I, and to some extent you, are the generation that have torched the planet and thrown away the NHS?
I think that's a case in point. And to be perfectly honest, they wouldn't listen that much.
You should be apologising.
I mean, if I came and said, you've got to vote X, they would just
say,
no,
the
I'm
only
not
people
doing
with
that.
clean hands here are the
I
under 10s.
disagree with that, though, because
By the way,
I think that many of us voted in parties for them to do things which they went against. The majority overwhelmingly did not support the Iraq war. The political class went ahead and did it. So I wouldn't say it's our fault per se, but I understand what you mean in terms of what young people have to face now. But it's not our fault. It's the politicians that don't listen.
I mean, the other issue is in Scotland, 16 to 18-year-olds get the vote.
But also I think Labour may well bring that in for the whole country.
Well, I think that's a good thing.
I don't think it's a good thing.
I think it's a good thing.
No?
No, if we're going to allow 16-year-olds to vote, then we need to allow them to be adults on everything. The majority of things they can't do, marriage, tattoos, the majority do not pay taxes. I don't think they have the experience. So I don't think they're not going to be well informed enough to be able to vote at 16.
Well, Rishi Sunak would probably send them off to fight in Ukraine.
No, he hasn't said that. The national service of empowering them to do something positive in the community doesn't mean they're going to go and fight.
It's litter picking. Nathan in Cheshire, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Is it so? If one did this in a lawful way, I think you can't just pass your postal vote to somebody else. But is it right to say, OK, to my kid, you tell me how you want me to vote?
I think it's appropriate that the next generation do have a say, and
well, that's different. I'm talking about giving her my vote. In other words, saying you're 17, you're more important than me.
Well, you're over 18, you can sign the consent form.
I can sign a consent form. Can I? Can I say I'm incapacitated? No, I can't let somebody else.
You can just say I want this person to be my voice.
Oh, I see. OK, so they could go to a polling station and go in and vote but they'd have to cast my vote. All right, but this is just theoretical, right? It's about whether actually, Nathan, the teenagers are more important than the 50-somethings and the 60-somethings.
well, people are going to vote for their own agenda, aren't they? They don't want to be taxed highly, but they've got more money than the youth. So how do you balance that?
Good question. Derek in Northamptonshire, hi.
Oh, good morning, everybody.
Would you give your vote to your son or daughter?
I'd leave it up to them as individuals. But on the point about my experience of previous governments, I would make the point that a lot of young people today have only had the experience of one particular government. They have no experience of any preceding governments, coalitions, for example. And I'd also say to them, don't be too influenced by what politicians say or don't say. I mean, one example I can bring to mind was the 1979 elections when Mrs. Thatcher came to power. There was a lot of talk about VAT going up from 8%. The predictions were it might go up to 10 or 12, but it actually went up to 15.
Yes,
but Mrs. Thatcher was very, very tight-lipped about that before the election. I actually benefited from that very, very well, because I just bought a brand new car just before the election, and after the election, the VAT would have been a lot more, so I saved quite a lot of money on that.
Well, that was a stroke of luck.
It was indeed, yes.
You should take up betting. Well, actually, no, maybe not. That's no, don't do that. Don't do that, Derek. Nick in Devon, hi.
Hi, everyone.
Do you think a 17-year-old has more right to vote than a 70-year-old?
Probably yes, I do. I mean, you know, sort of going back many, many years to 1970, I was sort of one of the first 18-year-olds to actually get the vote. Before then, it was sort of 21. Oh. And I've always been a supporter for 16-year-olds plus getting the vote.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, at the very least, I mean, with my kids, I've always actually spoken to them about politics. I've also taken them down to the polling station when I went to vote. And I think that's extremely important, and I just hope and wish that more sort of adults did that with their children to actually sort of give them a firm foundation. I mean, democracy is a very delicate flower, in my opinion.
Yep.
It needs nurturing, and the thing that you have to do is encourage young people to vote. And the worst thing possibly you can do is to sort of lecture them or tell them sort of, you know, sort of what to do and not actually sort of encourage them to sort of to go and vote. Let them tell you what they want, and, you know,
right.
And yes, you could be influenced by that. And I hope people are, because young people should have a voice. Unfortunately, political parties, particularly, you know, the bigger ones, the Conservatives and Labour, they in fact don't allow that to happen in the way they should.
Right, Nick, brilliant. Thank you so much for calling in. You take care. Now, more of your calls. Are you letting your kids choose how you're going to vote? I tried to put the case earlier. Having a 17-year-old who's switched on. By the way, my daughter loves politics. I take great pride.
That's
She's
good. That's really good.
Really interested in it. And I said to her the other day, let's watch the last part of the Thatcher documentary, which is the one where Thatcher describes how she was brought down.
Yeah.
She found her very compelling.
I think that's testament to you, though. Whenever I speak to people, because I love politics, and I think it's because my family always used to speak about it, so it made me interested. So I think with parents, if you want your children to be interested in politics or interested in nearly anything, talk about it in front of your children in a way that's interesting.
I think also that, I mean, they are interested in issues like climate change. I mean, I've talked about Palestine, I'll mention that, but they're getting access. I mean, there's good things about social media and bad things, but the good thing is they get access to some stuff.
Yeah, we get to see what they don't
want. I've never met a young person who's interested in the fact that we've got a £2.7 trillion debt. Yeah. I've never heard any young person mention that, ever. Dave in Staffordshire, hi.
Good morning.
Good, morning. So, all right, 17-year-old, we're saying, has more right to the vote than you and me.
I don't think they've got more right, but I think they've got as much of a right.
Would you stop people voting when they turn 80?
No, not at all.
I think you would, wouldn't you? You've said that before.
I said I've toyed with the argument before, insofar as I think a lot of older people just go and enjoy, don't get mixed up with the humdrum of politics, because it is for the next generation.
What do you think of that, Dave?
Well, Well, I can tell you a story where that will be defeated. I'm working alongside at the moment Baroness Golding, who's in her 90s, and she organises very much the rooms and organises exactly what's going on. And so I don't think I'd stop her voting at 80.
No, but it's just that if somebody, I mean, obviously I hope Baroness Golding lives for many years to come, but if someone votes and they keel over the next year, they've inflicted a particular stripe of government on people who might not have chosen it. And they're not around.
Maybe for social care, there are things that affect them, but that's the same with 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
But my thing is, when you look at, for example, the House of Lords, where the majority are
That's a separate argument.
older people. Yeah, but then we are having a lot of people that are of a certain ilk that have no understanding of the new generation.
Well, of course, we've also got a US presidential election between a 79-year-old and an 81-year-old who doesn't seem to know where he is.
No, well, I don't think either of them do. Thank you, Dave. Peter in Lincolnshire, hi.
Hello there.
What about this 17-year-old? Should you give your nearest 17-year-old your vote, Peter?
Well, fortunately, we swerved having children. That's our bit for the environment. What I would point out is that they can't be that environmentally responsible. They're taking hundreds of thousands of photographs that go onto the cloud. The cloud is, in fact, a data farm that's spewing out carbon dioxide. So all this feeds into the narrative of them actually resulting in their future being going down the Swanee.
I've never heard of that. That's an because you do need to power servers. However, Peter, if they were taking bits of celluloid down to boots like we used to do and paying 30p for a photo, that would be worse for the planet. Because think of all the toner.
Yes, but they're not even looking at their photographs.
No, they're
they
not.
think all they've got to do is flick a V on the screen and that's it done.
We need someone. We need a young. But so I was with some family about a year ago, and we all lined up against the wall. I said, "Let's get a photo of this." And I said to somebody, "You know what's amazing? None of us are going to look at the photo." He said, "No, the reason we took it is to have a moment when we take the photo.
Something together.
We don't." And I wonder whether we should. Your photos should just delete after one day. Because they're not, you never look at them again.
No, but then you do sometimes. If you're looking, it sounds bad, but if I'm looking for a receipt or something and I see all like old photos, I'm like, oh, that's nice.
That's true, but I'm talking black and white.
I think you touch on a real problem. My kids are half Italian. I mean, Italian families still eat together. The only time we come together is when you get a photo taken. There's something wrong there.
Peter, what else upsets you about young people?
Being young.
Well, not a lot.
Not a lot? Oh, well, that's good. Because, I mean, to be honest, taking photos isn't the worst thing in the world.
Well, it's contributing to carbon dioxide.
Well, you said that, yeah, but they could then argue, well, hang on, if they put it back the other way, they could say they've arrived in a planet that's half destroyed by our generation, right?
Well, some of our generation, we've always been pretty responsible, always had a small car, not a tank, try to cycle as much as we can, grow our own vegetables.
I like this guy. Everything you've said.
Doesn't take much, does it?
It's brilliant. You've completely converted me, Peter. Thank you so much. Don't stop voting, for heaven's sake. Sam is in Essex. Hi, Sam.
Hiya.
Hey. Oh, sorry, that was a bit of a weird greeting.
Yeah, that
Hi,
was a weird
what would you
one.
like to say?
I think it comes down to much more than age as to whether you're politically aware enough to cast a vote. So I really don't see why you would just base it on that. If you've got children who are politically engaged, and sometimes you meet children that are far more politically engaged than a 40-year-old that's going to, jog along to the voting office and make a terrible mistake. Yeah. So I think if you open up a debate at home and your children are informed enough to answer the queries you've got, to talk openly about what they think the best policies are and can convince you, then why not take that on board when you cast your vote?
What about this, Sam? Do you think that there should be a small quiz before you're allowed to vote, and based on that you should be able to vote, no matter your age?
Brilliant.
It's a brilliant idea, but I just don't know how that would come into play, because it's not always that clear-cut, because then you're going to be asking people questions. It's going to be a very standardised, it's got to be a very small quiz, and that doesn't necessarily mean by failing that quiz you're unable to vote or you don't deserve to vote.
What would be the one question? Let's just have one question. What would it be? To check that you've got a clue. What colour was Neil Kinnock's hair? Right, that's it.
Did he have hair?
Or who was the Prime Minister before Thatcher? There's a question.
But I don't think you need to be a history buff to understand the world we live in now and to understand how you want
to be honest, to be honest, I mean, if you're going to quiz people about things, I mean, you know, the fact is that the polls suggest that it's people who are educated who are more likely to vote, in other words, middle-class people. Uneducated, working-class people, less likely to vote. That's not right.
OK,
That's not right.
Sam, thank you. Quickly, let's go to Peter in Northamptonshire, who's been hanging on. Peter, what about this, the argument that 17-year-olds have more right to vote than 70-year-olds?
I agree with that, Jeremy. My great-grandmother was a suffragette, and 100 years ago today, she did not have the right to vote. Yeah. And I think young people are the most unrepresented part of our society today. I give the vote to 16 and 17-year-olds, and I think young people should be encouraged as much as they can to vote. And
thank you so much. I'm hoping that. Thank you so. We'll leave it there, Peter. But thank you. I really appreciate it.